Hey guys, I wanted to take a look at the Franco kernel on the Nexus 5. You can see I'm running version 32 right here. That's the latest stable release that's available in the app right now. It may be different for you because you may be watching this video a little bit later, but I'll be talking to you about my impressions on performance and my impressions on battery life. I was running this kernel all over the weekend. I used it on Wi-Fi and 3G separately, so we'll get results for both of those. And of course, your results may differ from mine depending on the way you use your device, so yeah, let's go ahead and check this out. Okay, so let's start off by checking out the official Franco kernel updater app. It's a really nice app, it's really well made. The first tab is connected, which basically just gives us a bit of information about what Franco's doing with the kernel, where he's going to go next and things like that. Then we have the FK updater, which is essentially where you can actually download and flash the kernels from. It tells you your current kernel and also the latest available kernel. You can click that and it'll give you the changelog. You can choose to auto flash or download, and then you can flash it manually. That's up to you. Next up, we have the backup and restore option. Pretty obvious what that does. We then have the CPU manager, and this is where stuff gets a little bit more interesting. So you've got the maximum CPU frequency. You can choose to underclock or overclock all the way up to 3 gigahertz if you're crazy enough to try that out. I'm not, so I'm just going to leave that there. The minimum frequency is 300 megahertz. The default governor is interactive and actually only includes interactive and performance. And we have the GPU control. You can see the maximum GPU frequency, the up threshold and the down threshold. Again, you can mess around with those if you want. And you've also got voltage control here as well. So I've actually undervolted this by 2 steps, minus 25. And that's undervolted there. You can also choose to individually undervolt or just globally undervolt by hitting those two tabs up the top. You then have governor control, and if you're clever enough to mess around with that, you can do that. And you have the hot plug control as well. We've also got a few other settings in the kernel settings tab. You've got the IO schedulers, the CPU temperature threshold, vibration amplifier, which is already customized to 100. I think on the default kernel or the stock kernel, it's set to 60. So you'll definitely notice a difference in the vibration straight away when you flash Franco kernel. USB fast charge. You've also got some headphone, microphone, and speaker gains. Now, there are some other things here like file manager and color control. By the way, color control within this application right now doesn't actually work. You can see it's not available for your device. You can still customize the gamma on Franco kernel by using the separate display control app, which I'll check out in another video. And lastly, we got the per app modes, which essentially allow you to change the kernel settings per applications. Let's say you've got a game, maybe this game's a little bit stressful, maybe you want to overclock the CPU just when you're playing that game. You can do that, and then when you come out of the game, it will go back to the normal profile where you're underclocked or on the stock frequency. So yeah, let's go ahead and move over to my experiences over the weekend. Okay, so I wanted to briefly mention performance here. Now, Franco kernel doesn't use MP Decision hot plugging. It uses its own custom-made hot plugging, which is great for things like battery life and actually really good in games. I did notice the games were very smooth on Franco kernel, but in terms of the general UI, it didn't feel quite as snappy, quite as smooth as something like Elemental X, which is of course running the MP Decision hot plugging. Now, that's by no means to say it's slow or anything like that. It really isn't. I'd say about 90 to 95% of the time, this kernel is very, very smooth in the UI. But for that random 10 to 5%, I did notice some little slowdowns in the transitions, very slight. You probably won't even see them as I'm going through right now. And it just didn't feel quite as quick as something like Elemental X, like I've mentioned before. So you can see the recents were a little bit slow to open there. Things like when you leave the device for quite a while in deep sleep, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to wake up and things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much all I want to mention in terms of performance. I don't want to put a downer on performance because the kernel is very good and especially good in games. I was actually very shocked to how good it was in games. So if you're a gamer, definitely try out the Franco kernel. We'll move on to battery life. Okay, so this was the first day of the weekend and I was completely on Wi-Fi on this day. In terms of my usage, I used Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, YouTube, Chrome, all that sort of stuff. I had automatic brightness on as well, and you can see it lasted me 17 hours, 34 minutes, 48 seconds, so a pretty good standby time there. And by the time I went to bed, I was still at 60%, so pretty epic battery life there. And you can see when I went to bed was 2 AM in the morning. So pretty impressive in terms of the graph. You can see that there. Pretty nice little, not too steep, that graph. You can see the GPS was on as well. I had my location on high accuracy, Wi-Fi the entire time. In terms of the screen on time, I had an hour and 20 minutes. So not too much screen on time. That was just my usage for the day. I was busy doing other things. So the more screen on time you have, obviously the less battery life you're going to have. So let's move on to the 3G usage. So here we go. I had 14 hours, 34 minutes, 23 seconds standby time. And again, this is when I went to bed. And this time I only had 31% left. And that was at 11:44 when I went to bed and put it back on charge. You can see the graph there taking a lot more dips in terms of signal strength and things like that. I did have Wi-Fi on a few times, but essentially this was 95% 3G usage. And in terms of screen on time, a little bit more as well this time. So 2 hours, 12 minutes. So yeah, I've been really impressed with this battery life, guys. You can see here I still had 31% left, and that was on 3G all day. And when I was on Wi-Fi, you were looking at 60% left on the day with about an hour and 20 minutes screen on time. So again, it's going to depend on your usage. This was my usage. It's going to be different for you and your signal strength and all sorts of things like that. So take that into account there, guys. But yeah, Franco Kernel is definitely pretty epic on its battery life. Give it a shot if that's what's most important to you. Peace out.